think one of the most depressed people in the Bible is David.
Yeah,
David.
I was gonna
Read
mention him.
if you ever read, you're reading Psalms, you're reading the different. It's like one day it's like I bless the Lord, the next day it's like oh my God, it's like, geez, David, get a grip.
Hey guys, it's Martin for sure. Welcome to Martin Inspires. While you're here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join the Mod fam. In today's video, we're going to be discussing religion and mental health. Does God care about mental health? What is the biblical approach to dealing with mental health issues? Do Christians suffer from depression? All of them we're going to discuss in today's video. Joining me is my sister girl, Tasha Lallemand, who is the founder of Confessions of a Christian Girl, which discusses taboo topics in the Christian community. She also works in the hair and beauty industry. I also have my bestie, my twin, Alice Tshimuanga, and she's going to be sharing with us her mental health experience, particularly with depression and how she was able to overcome it. So ladies, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us. I'm excited to the topic is pretty serious, but I'm excited to discuss it.
Yeah. Okay, so personally, I've noticed in the last recent years, mental health has become like a very common topic within the church. I'm hearing more and more Christians discussing their mental health experiences. And, personally, I thought the church was once the untouched body. Mental health was for the unbelievers, it was for the atheists. But nowadays, we're finding more and more people, becoming more confident to share their experiences with depression, anxiety. So I was thinking to myself, what caused this increase in mental health illnesses, awareness? What is going on in the church? Natasha, I wanted to start with you.
I think that it's not so much of an increase. I think because the more technology happens, the more we have information to access, we have more access to information, the more we can go online and see who's doing what on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, Zoom, and the awareness has increased. Whereas before, I don't think that it's not like it wasn't going on. I think we just weren't really talking about it because the channels to discuss it are not as much as they were before. I really truly think that that's what it is. And that's both positive and negative, because some of us are trying to tackle the issue and we don't know what we're talking about. We're not prepared, because in the church, emotion and having feelings, it was almost like a bad word for you to express how you felt. And because we had this thing, and I don't know who made it up, maybe it was the devil himself, where it's like everybody has to be perfect. You can't have any struggles.
Right.
You're a perfect Christian. You got to be able to fast, 3 days on just water only and have no temptation. And you know what I mean? It's like we had this almost, I hate to use this reference, but almost like this Ned Flanders type of Christianity, like you could do no wrong. And that's not the case. So I think, again, like it's not necessarily that it's increasing in the church. I just think the awareness and having the conversations that are necessary have definitely gone up.
Okay, so do Christians suffer from mental health issues, illnesses? I want to bring you in, Alex, because you had suffered from depression since you were 9, I think. So for those thinking, okay, I don't know about depression. Is it real? Are you guys just having a bad day and you're calling this what called depression? What does depression look like on a day-to-day basis?
Okay, so first and foremost, I'd like to say I agree with Tasha in that we have a more awareness of like what depression actually is now, whereas before it's not that it wasn't happening. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but we will see in the Bible there are people who went through depression, and it's not something that's imaginary, it's something that's real. And we often underestimate it. I feel like in the Christian world, we just say, oh, it's just a demon, just cast it out, it will go. But really, it's something that needs to be talked about. I don't think it's something that should be taboo per se, because I feel like it's really taboo, especially young people go through these things and they just seem to think, oh, like I'm just experiencing a demonic attack. It may be a demonic attack, but it's something that does need to be talked about. It does need to be externalized. It's not something that should be kept inside and kept like, oh, I should just keep it to myself. Like I as you said, I suffered from depression since I was 9, and I felt like I couldn't trust anyone with that secret in a way. I couldn't tell anyone because I was made to feel like, oh, you can't just go around telling people you have depression. I was made to feel like you have to keep it inside. Just keep it inside. If you're gonna cry, cry in secret. If you're gonna do anything, just do it in secret. Just keep it hush. And I just got to a point where I was literally fighting suicidal thoughts, and I thought, no, I can't do this. I have to tell my pastor. And just externalizing that helps me to kind of just get help because I was
Mm-hmm.
literally crying for help, but I was crying in silence in a way. Like the demon was telling me, just close your mouth, don't say anything, don't say out loud, just keep it to yourself, and
Wow.
fine, I'll be okay. But then when I
Mm-hmm.
actually like externalized that and told someone about it, we prayed about it. That's when I started to see the change in that the demon wanted me to keep it quiet. The demon wanted me
Mm.
to stay quiet about it, and that's what I feel like a lot of Christians go through, in that they just stay quiet about it. They just feel like, okay, I can't talk to anyone about it. But just
Mm.
by externalizing it, I feel like that's one way of exposing already. And yeah.
Yeah. So what caused the depression? What was, what triggered it?
I feel like for me personally, because I moved to the UK at such a young age, and I was already quite settled back home, and I was like, yeah, I have my friends here, I have my support system, and then I moved here, and I was like, oh, everything I had was taken away from me in a way, like a whole
Mm-hmm.
a whole foundation was just torn apart. So I felt like, oh, like that's gone now. What am I supposed to do? So I feel like that was the one thing that triggered it. In fact, the fact that I moved to another country at such a young age and I just didn't have the support system that I felt like I had before. That's the one thing that.
Mm. And you mentioned something very important, something I've been thinking about deeply. I want you guys to both answer. Do you think depression is a demon?
Tasha?
Are you
Tash, you want
waiting
to
for me
go?
to answer? Alice hit on some really important points just now, like
Mm-hmm.
a few of them. I do believe there is such thing as a spirit of depression.
Mm-hmm.
I think the conversation is this: how is a spirit introduced into somebody's life?
Mm,
Right.
And because what happens is the enemy wants entry, the spirit wants entry, and it wants an entry point so that it can affect the other areas of our life. So even
Mm.
though we are a spirit, we have a soul, we live in a body, we're talking about three different components of ourselves already, and we're still just one person. So
mm,
if it's a
Mm.
spirit of depression and enters in, it can affect your soul. It can even affect your body. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
reports on, the effects of depression. That's why they tell people who struggle with depression, get vitamin D, get sunlight, go for a walk,
Right.
exercise,
Right.
all these different things
Right.
that
Mm-hmm.
can help balance things out physically. For some
Yeah.
people, again, going back to what is the entry point of that spirit, I think for me in a particular area, I think some of it was generational. um
Wow.
just not just as a
Mm.
black woman, but also let me just bring it more home, just the circumstances that I was born into, it wasn't the best. My mom wasn't happy
Wow.
while she was pregnant with me. When you're
Mm.
pregnant, you want to be settled, you want to be joyful, you don't want to be stressed out,
mm,
because the baby
Right.
can pick up all of those things and sense all of those things. So I think for me it was environmental, I think it was generational. But Alice said something that was really interesting to me. She said, coming, I think the first feelings of emotions were about like 9, you said. I know for me, I think I was about in the third grade. So that was like 8 or 9, around the same
Wow.
age, right? And so you were talking about how, you were home, you were settled, and now you're into it. Also, too, UK, y'all don't have the best weather. It's kind of
Oh
gloomy all
Lord, the
the
way
time. It is. It's
this.
gloomy. It's gloomy. It rains a lot. People also taking that can also affect how
yeah,
you
yeah.
feel. And so there's
Preach.
a number of different factors. And it's like, why are we ignoring that? But I think
Mm-hmm.
the biggest thing is attachment. When we
Mm.
are disconnected from something that should nurture us, something that
Mm,
should make us feel as we're accepted and we're settled, I think people underestimate the effect that it can have on human beings. And God created us for connectivity. He
yeah.
created
Mm.
us to be in environments, to be in healthy environment. That was his idea. But as us
Mm-hmm.
human beings, we have bright ideas, and we probably have messed up his plans because we want to do things our own way. And so here we
Yeah.
are, where we have to deal with fallen man. We have to deal with
Mm,
sin, and one of the consequences
Yeah.
of sin is depression. Um,
Mm.
yeah.
Alice, do you agree with her?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. Like she touched upon some of the causes of depression, and I think definitely the whole attachment and connectivity point is really
Mm.
relevant. That is really relevant to humans in terms of how they get depressed and when they get depressed. I feel like that is very relevant, very relevant. Yeah.
So the big question, does God care about mental health?
Who's
One,
gonna?
anyone can jump in.
Okay, I'll go first. Yeah, I
Mhm.
definitely believe that God cares about mental health. I'm a strong believer in that God cares about every single aspect of our lives, including mental health. We cannot exclude mental health because I feel like that is something that affects the rest of our lives. So if we're well
Yeah.
physically, if we're well mentally, that will affect our physical health, that will affect our spiritual life, that will affect our finances. So from mental
Mm-hmm.
health flows all these things. So I definitely do feel like mental health is one of the things, one of the most important things to God, in fact, because it's a matter of the brain, but it's also a matter of the
Mm-hmm.
soul, it's also a matter of the heart. So I feel like God definitely cares about mental health. Yeah.
And Tash.
Yeah. Every time I think about that, I think about Paul when, he says that, when he says that he prays that, we'll be good health and that our soul will also prosper, right? In some
Yeah.
translation, I think it also translated to body or whatever. But I think it's so interesting that he mentions the word soul. Because our soul is
Mm.
our mind and our will, our emotions. It's the seat of our
Yeah.
attention. It's our heart, essentially. And so I think that because one thing that Paul also says that I can't remember the exact scripture. I wish I knew. Sorry, not Bible scholar. But Paul talks about how sometimes there are times where when he's writing to the churches, he said, I'm giving you what I think is wisdom, what I think is right.
Mm.
There are times when I'm speaking to you where it is directly from God, and I will distinguish the difference between the two. I think that it was so important that he mentioned soul because it lets me know New Testament God cares about every aspect of who I am,
Wow.
not
Mm.
just just my Christian life, if that makes sense.
Mm.
When it talks about
Yeah.
David talks about like, Lord, restore the joy of your
Right.
salvation. He's talking about,
Mm-hmm.
God, I want to have joy in my Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
That's important
Yeah.
to God. And
Yeah.
also too, I
Yeah.
think we forget that we are his ambassadors on this earth. We're supposed to represent Christ on this earth. Who
Mm.
are we bringing to Christ? Who wants to embrace Christianity if we're always sad and depressed? And so
Mm.
I've noticed one prayer that I have, and that's a negotiation between me and God. Is like, God, your name is on the line when it comes to me.
Mm.
Like, I want to do my part. I want to do
That's
the
a
work,
word.
what I can to make sure that I'm right. But God, there are days where I fall short and I need you and I need your help, because how am
Mm.
I a representation of you? How can I walk around and say I'm a daughter of a king and be sad? What daughters of kings do you know that are sad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for those listening who are like or watching and like, I don't see mental health in the Bible. I don't think anyone has suffered from mental health illnesses. Anyone was depressed or went through anxiety or schizophrenia. What is your take? What's your answer?
I think one of the most depressed people in the Bible is David.
Yeah.
David.
I was gonna
Read
mention him.
if you ever read, you're reading Psalms, you're reading the different, it's like one day it's like, I bless the Lord. The next day it's like, oh my God, it's like, geez, David, get just that. Even going back to that connectivity piece, David talks about that
Mm.
in sin did my mother conceive me. We don't hear nothing about David's mother, but we hear about his father. We hear about the way his brothers treated him. We know that he went to the palace very young and that he was working for somebody who obviously had bipolar disorder. Something was wrong with Saul. That is another person who struggled and he didn't handle it the best way possible. But again, it comes to that attachment piece. We know from the story of Saul, Old Testament Saul, that he was not as close to God as he should have been to have a successful reign and just have a successful relationship with God. He was more
Yeah.
concerned with how do people see me. He wanted, the prophet stand close to me, even though I know God's done with me, because he was so caught up in what people had to say. And you can tell he was just in a whirlwind of misery. But I think David is also a really good example. Another, let's give a New Testament example. I cannot imagine that any person who was wrongfully accused, was
Mm.
framed, suffered injustice, had a faulty trial, was dying for the sins of the world. People were still mocking
Mm.
him even while he was on the cross. Half the people
Mm.
didn't even know why he was on the cross. They didn't understand the fullness. Even when he was like, pray with me a little bit, his three best friends, they done fell asleep. He is praying till it is like clots of blood. I have never seen anybody pray to that level where I'm literally seeing blood come out. But I can imagine
Yeah.
that that's depressing. I can
Mm.
imagine that
That's a
that's
good
sad.
point. Yeah.
And the Bible says that, Christ was somebody with like passions. He experienced a lot of things of you and I. I can imagine Jesus at 12 years old, knowing that he's the son of God, having this revelation like, man, I left my comfort of heaven to come here. Earth is ghetto. I can imagine Jesus feeling some type of way sometimes, or his mother and his father
Yeah.
not understanding him when all he wanted to be was in the temple, but he has to be a good 12-year-old. And we don't hear about him again until he's 30. We don't know what
Mm.
happened in Jesus' life between 12 and 30. So we have multiple examples of what's going on. I mean, I can go more if you need more examples, but I want Alice to answer as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna touch upon David, but since you touched upon David, I'm gonna bring up Job. I feel like one of the persons who suffered the most,
Yes.
apart from Jesus himself, was Job. And oh
Yeah.
Lord, we know Job suffered a lot. His friends came and was like, yeah, you're a secret sinner. We know you've done something. There's no way, no way you're a
Yeah.
Christian if God is punishing you like this. Like he must have been through it. His wife even
Yeah.
came and was like, yeah, just curse God and die. And he was like, you speak like a foolish woman. Like Job must have
Yeah.
really gone through it. Another person was Elijah. Elijah is another person that
Yeah.
you look at and I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, that's a
Mm-hmm.
mighty prophet. But this guy, after his victory at Mount Carmel, was like, yeah, Lord, I want to die. Kill me now.
Yeah.
It's like that guy went through some serious depressive stages. And the more you read about it, the more you're like, oh, these people are actually humans, because you
The
think, oh,
human.
they're
Yeah.
prophets. Oh my God, they're prophets. You highly regard them. But then at the same time, you're like, oh, wow, they're human. They're actually human.
Yeah. You
But
guys mentioned such great examples. Job, David, Elijah. Oh my God. Woof. But why do you think God allows us to get depressed, get sad, go through anger? Why do you think God allows it?